Hey guys, John here. Today we're in Falcon 3, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Harmonic Resonator Oscillator, and it's going to sound something kind of like this. Yeah, so some kind of staccato string. So let's go ahead and clear this out. So actually, before we do that, let's kind of take a quick look. So we're using the Harmonic Resonator down over here, and then we're just kind of applying a little bit of maximizer, some EQ, a little bit of chorus or chorus, and then some reverb. And we can maybe get a little bit more crazy once we start building this thing. So let's go to the 3 lines, go to new program, and basically the first thing we need to add is the harmonic resonator. So let's put this here on the key group, and let's turn this gain down a little bit because it kind of comes out a little bit hot. So this is what we have to start out with. So for the last patch I've been doing a couple other of these staccato strings, I've changed the transient here to this sub-hit, and then for this texture here, I've changed this to, or it's the ESQ. I think there's a couple ones down here. So ESQ1, and then we can kind of start to get started here. So let's turn off the noise and then the texture. So we can hear this transient here, and then kind of mix in our texture. And then our noise as well. We have something kind of mixed there. Okay, so now we need to kind of first thing, we're going to adjust the decay here, but we have these resonator banks here. So for the last couple of patches, I've actually just been using 2 of these. So let's turn on the second one here, and on the chorus tuning, let's double click this and go to 12, so plus 1 octave. So that's what we're going to be mixing in, but we don't really need it that high. We can maybe do it like a little bit halfway around there. And same thing for the third one, but double click this here, and we're going to go to 24, so 2 octaves up. That's what we're going to be adding in there. Kind of just mix those into taste. Okay, so we have something kind of like this. So now we need to start increasing our decay here. And even here, it kind of starts sounding like a steel string guitar. Bring up our scale a little bit. And then we have some dampening here so it's not as harsh. And maybe a little bit of mod depth. So we have something kind of like this here. Now, I kind of want to bring and kind of glue this stuff together. So on the layer here, let's go ahead and add a maximizer under the dynamic, and then let's go to the maximizer and bring this up all the way and kind of just slowly bring this down until we're happy. Okay, so we're kind of getting close here. So if we're doing something kind of staccato-like, we're going to need to change the envelope. So down here for our amp envelope, we're not going to have any sustain, right? Maybe a little bit of release and decay in case we hold it down. Now for this, we kind of actually do need to add some attack. Because generally with a staccato, it doesn't seem like it attacks that quick. Okay, so that's pretty close. We can always come back here to kind of edit it a little bit. So let's close our maximizer, and now we have to kind of basically tonally shape the sound here. So let's go to get an equalizer here on the digital EQ, and then grab the default and kind of just maybe scoop some of the low, or not scoop, but like kind of low pass these, or high pass these low end frequencies here. Now there's always this kind of rich low end sound here, so we can kind of find that. Something kind of like that. And then the tricky part for this kind of sound here, there's a couple things that we need to either remove and some things that we need to add. So we do like that kind of brashness that kind of gives it that sharp staccato sound. Could be around here-ish or so. But at the very top where that noise oscillator kind of comes in, it kind of breaks that illusion a little bit. So if we do something like a low pass here and we scroll down and we don't really want it so harsh on 24, maybe we can get 18. Kind of keep it a little in check. But if we do too much, we're kind of losing a little bit of that top end, so that's kind of the tricky part for this kind of sound here. And we could even go more of a decay or release, kind of bring this down a little bit. We're kind of getting there here. So what we can do now is add a little bit of chorus here to kind of thicken it up a little bit, so we can go down to our modulation, and the chorus here, we can go to the default and kind of bring down the mix. Just adding a little bit of that in there, and then we can always add a reverb. So go to the reverb, and for this, I kind of want to use the impulse reverb, and the acoustic spaces under the Kapelle Church, the German church, is a nice one, but we do want to increase the high dampening here. And maybe a little bit less wet, and for the pre-delay, maybe 12 milliseconds. And what might be kind of interesting is maybe if we do a little bit of alternate on the, maybe a little bit of alternating on the pan, that might be kind of interesting here. So let's go ahead and try this. So let's right click this here, add modulation, go to the other, and then alternate. But for this one, it's going to be way too much. We don't want that much. So maybe we can go to 0.1. What might be kind of interesting if we do a little bit of distortion in this before we kind of get into the chorus and the reverb. So we can add a plus here and then go to our drive and distortion, maybe go with a diode clipper and kind of bring this before these two and kind of see how that changes the sound here. Kind of gives it a little bit of extra harmonics, kind of makes it a little bit more exciting. So that kind of low end buzz there, or the low end kind of hit here, that's going to be a lot with this transient here. So depending on how much of this gain or how much of this we want, we can kind of dial this in. So more of that low end. It's kind of cool because it adds some of that dynamics, that just kind of something's happening here, but we can always reduce this if we don't want too much of that. And it's more kind of more mid-rangey. But I kind of like it a little bit more because it kind of, like I said, it adds it to the impact. So we can alt click this here and it's at 0. Maybe bring it down just a little bit, maybe -2, something like that. And then over here for our dampening, we can kind of, we're kind of at a default spot here. We can always adjust this more depending on how we want the tonality of the whole thing. So here's a little bit more, I guess, dampened. The higher frequencies are kind of a little bit more attenuated. But we do lose a little bit of that top end because of that. So it's kind of a fine balancing between the EQ and the dampening. And generally for a sound kind of like this, using this harmonic resonator, there's going to be a certain spot of, like a certain range of keys that this really sounds good, and a certain range where it kind of doesn't. So if we go too high, it's okay, but it doesn't really sell the illusion as we're playing down here. Yeah, so something kind of cool like that. And maybe a little bit more reverb. That's kind of really up to you, kind of how you want to dial this in here. But using an impulse verb for something like this is actually pretty cool. Yeah, but definitely a cool sound. So that's kind of really the main way to get started with that. Just kind of go with EQ, maybe a little bit more distortion, maybe kind of add some effects, experiment with things. But this is kind of the building blocks to make a cool staccato kind of sound like this here. And there's a lot of fun stuff here. You can keep in mind you have 3 other resonators that we didn't even use that you could add if you would like to. So yeah, I'm going to put this patch up for free. So if you'd like a copy to kind of play around with this thing or maybe kind of tweak it from here, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll see you in the next video.